One of the reasons the Indianapolis 500 is considered the greatest spectacle in racing is its unique qualification format, which has two really dramatic and exciting elements that you really don't see in other forms of motorsport. The first being the race to the pole position. Yes, every race has a pole position, and most races have time trials or qualifications. But in the Indianapolis 500, it either means in the past you were seeing track record speeds that had never been seen before on a closed course, and more recently, we've seen incredible pole shootouts between the top drivers and cars and teams in the field. It's always dramatic, it's always exciting. And of course, the other element to the Indianapolis 500 qualifications and something that makes it so unique and exciting and engaging is not just the battle at the front of the field, but the battle to get in the field. Bump day, bumping, who will get in, who will be out. Sometimes we've seen incredibly dramatic moments that have lived longer than some of the pole sitters of the Indianapolis 500. That's just how exciting it is, this qualification format, to get in the Indianapolis 500. All of that being said, and all of those things still continue, thankfully, to happen in some way, shape, or form or fashion with the Indianapolis 500 qualification format. But here's the thing. I think it could really be improved because right now, I don't feel like the Indy 500 qualification format actually is as efficient as it could be. Because the thing about IndyCar racing, at least where it is right now, the honest truth is the IndyCar racing has the attention of the motorsport world for 2 weeks a year. And it's the 2 weeks that the Indy cars are racing on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Oval. With that being said, the format as it currently is doesn't efficiently enough use that time and space out some of those dramatic moments like pole qualifying and bumping for the field where we can really sink our teeth into it. It's something that I would have been able to tell you as a fan standing in the grandstands in 2019 when on the same day that Simon Pagenaud qualified on the pole position, Fernando Alonso was bumped from the field by Kyle Kaiser, and both stories kind of one story clearly was overshadowing the other, meaning Alonso getting bumped from the field completely overshadowed the pole sitter for the Indianapolis 500. But I've really begun to realize it since working on the media side in the Indy 500 Media Center since 2021. I've really begun to realize that this is a problem. When I'm creating daily reports and I'm trying to, blast the stories out to the general public all around the world about what's going on at the Indianapolis 500, every year during qualifications, I have to make a choice. Do I lead with the story of the pole sitter, or do I lead with the story of the driver who was bumped from the field? And I don't feel that this is the way that it should be. I think it runs too inefficiently. I think we're overlapping stories in a 2-week span where you should be spreading out your content as much as humanly possible. So that's something that frustrates me a little bit. But to kind of understand this, let's take a look first at how the qualifying format was last year. Now, I expect there will be a few tweaks this year to the qualifying format, so it might not be exactly the same in 2025 as was in 2024, but you're not going to see the wholesale changes that I propose to the qualification format, which shares a lot of the current elements of what qualifications are, but brings some tradition back to it and also, again, spreads that content out. So let's take a look at the actual qualifying format as it stands right now. And this is one of my big problems with the current qualifying format is the first day of time trials, because nothing really is settled. Yes, you qualify for positions 13 through 30, so you know all of the quote-unquote unimportant positions in terms of qualifications, in terms of that drama. But then you leave that day and you're sitting there having to, again, make a choice between talking about the drivers who are racing for the pole position or the drivers who are currently on the outside looking in. And I think that's really difficult from the perspective of the media to be able to get the stories out there. I just don't think it's the right decision. Another part of this that I don't really like, and I never will like, and this is the traditionalist in me talking, we've got to get rid of the second lane. Because for me, I, I don't think the Indianapolis, it's always a risk going out to qualify for the Indy 500. Let's not mince words about it. But I don't think there should ever be a time where you go out and qualify for the Indianapolis 500 and you have already qualified for the field and you get to go back out without withdrawing your time or risking that time and speed and your position in the field. I don't like that. I know some people will say, well, it means you're going to see more runs. I don't like it. I just don't like it. And at the end of the day, like I said, you get to the end of the day and you really haven't settled anything. The only thing that you've settled is who's going to be running for the pole and who's going to possibly be on the outside looking in. And I think the last row shootout in and of itself is a bit of a flawed concept, but we'll talk about that here in just a second. So when we get to Sunday, it's a lot more laxadays of a day. Things start at 3:05 p.m., which I get is an idea for television. But I think with this new Fox deal, you're going to have a little bit more flexibility than you had on NBC. I think full days of qualifying really isn't that much to ask. And again, we'll talk about it when I bring kind of my idea of what I think the qualifications should be. But I'll say this about the Fast 12. I think it's too many cars that get through and get to run for the pole. Let's be honest. It's rare to see a driver jump from row 3 on Saturday to the front row. It's even more rare to see a driver jump from row 4 speed to row 1 speed. You usually never see that, especially with the way the qualifications are scheduled, right? The slowest to fastest, the track conditions usually only get better as the track cools off. So why are we making 12th place run again in the Fast 12 unless they are just find an enormous amount of speed? Well, but without practice in between Fast 12, or not a long period of practice, obviously you get a warm up, but without a long practice period to kind of refine that race car, you're just never going to see that kind of a jump. And then we go from cutting 6 cars out of the Fast 12 and everybody's sitting around in that pole shootout. Then we go to last chance qualifying, which I think is probably my biggest criticism out of anything for the current format. Because the drama of bump day feels like it is kind of shoehorned into the pole run, number one. I disagree with that completely. And second of all, there's so many restrictions to try to get, it almost seems like to limit the runs that can be made by cars trying to bump their way into the field. And the fact that it usually is only limited to 4 or 5 and at the most 6 cars going for the final 3 spots, I think that reduces a ton of the potential drama that you could build over the course of the 2 days of qualifying. And I just don't understand. The only logical conclusion I could come to with that is that IndyCar and the Indianapolis 500, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, they're just not confident that they can constantly guarantee that there'll be bumping. But I would say that's not a problem with the format of the Indianapolis 500. That's more of a problem with why aren't engines being made available? Why aren't there sponsors available to pay for race cars? Why are race cars and teams not available to enter the Indianapolis 500? I would say we should solve those problems before we try to solve whether or not we should make provisions for a bump day at the Indianapolis 500. Then the Fast 6. I mean, this is pretty simple and straightforward. I think this is one of the most dramatic moments in sports. I love the knockout, or not the knockout format, Matt, but this format of everybody gets one shot and go as fast as you can. And I think it's really dramatic. In lieu of setting outright track records, which it doesn't look like 237's ever going to get knocked down anytime soon, I think that this is a very good middle ground where you still give the fans something to get excited about, cheer about. I've loved that Fast 9 sort of format for a very, very long time, so I think that should stay. So let's take a look at what I would do as a qualifying format for the Indianapolis 500. And it's a 2-day format, and it's kind of similar in some respects to the 2011-2012 qualifying format, which I think was probably the best balance of tradition and what we have now. But I think some of the dramatics of what we have now should be absolutely retained. So here's what I would do. Day one, it's pole day. We're going to set the pole position for the Indianapolis 500. That's the entire purpose of day one. We're going to set a pole sitter. We're going to find out who he is, and then we're going to maximize the amount of time we have with him to promote him as the pole sitter for the Indianapolis 500. So round one of qualifying on pole day will take place from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Each car is guaranteed one attempt in the order of the Friday qualifying draw. The fastest 9 cars will be locked into the pole shootout. These 9 spots are the only spots on the first day locked into the starting field on Saturday. So essentially, we're setting 9 spots. So everybody will be allowed to you don't have to take your qualifying attempt if you don't want to, but you're guaranteed one if you take a draw on Friday. And quite honestly, I think everybody would take a shot at it, even if you're not expecting to get into the field. It's good practice for Sunday. But we're only locking in 9 spots. The only thing we're focused on the first day is the battle for the pole position. And I think 9 spots is the sweet spot. I think 6 is too few and 12 is too many. Once the initial qualifying line has been completed, qualifications will open up to any and all cars that wish to qualify, much like it is now. Once you get through that qualifying line the first time, then it's a free-for-all. Anybody can jump in line, get out of line, do whatever. But here's the key difference with my format is there will only be one qualifying line. Any attempt to re-qualify will result in that car's previous best 4-lap average being erased and replaced by that car's most recently completed 4-lap run. All completed 4-lap qualifying attempts will be recorded. And if someone withdraws a time in the Fast 9 and does not go faster, the 10th fastest qualifier will be promoted to the Fast 9 shootout. That's another change I'm taking from the past and bringing back to the future. That's something that I think is another miss and something that we've had some confusion on in the past with the qualifying format as it is that if you're not in that top 30 as it is now, even if you have the 31st, 32nd, 33rd, 34th, whatever, fastest 4-lap average, they just treat that as if it's not happened. And I think that's the wrong attitude. I don't think you're encouraging people to kind of keep their time and speed. You're encouraging them to not treat qualifying runs as important as they are in the Indy 500. So from my perspective, I think you almost want to reward guys who are willing to be, 10th, 11th, 12th fastest and hope that some of the guys in the Fast 9 get greedy and try to go faster, withdraw their times, whatever. I think that could create some additional drama that would be exciting. A wave off, a crash, or a mechanical failure during a run will result in no time or speed being recorded. So back to the point is if you go out because we have no, gimme lane, we have no lane 2, you take a risk and withdraw your qualifying speed, you ain't in the show. And you better get that thing back across the finish line in 4 laps to record a time. Otherwise, you don't have a time for the Indianapolis 500 going into the second day. So then we take a couple hours off, much like the current format. In fact, I looked exactly at this format to say, okay, 4:05 is the time we decided Fast 12 can happen, and then we go into Fast 6. So these top 6 cars and drivers and teams get about 2 hours to re-prepare their cars and get them ready to go out and run. So that's exactly how I formatted this. So we take 2 hours. Once we've set the Fast 9, we give the teams 2 hours to cool the cars down, make any setup adjustments that they feel necessary, and then they line up. And the Fast 9 will receive 1 additional qualifying attempt from slowest to fastest, and the fastest of the 9 will start on the pole position for the Indianapolis 500. That is almost exactly the same as things are right now, but this is our dramatic end to Saturday qualifying. And again, it's almost perfectly TV timed, right? You've got an hour block just before prime time. I think that would be good for Fox. I think it would be good for IndyCar. And again, I think 9 is the right number. It's just enough of the field to make every run dramatic. It's not too many cars. It's not too few cars. That's how I would format it. So now we have a pole position and we have the first 3 rows of the grid set on Saturday. And not only now do we have that storyline of the pole sitter, but we've got all of the drivers the next day that are on the outside looking in. And any of those 24, 25, 26, 27, and on drivers that are going to attempt to qualify tomorrow could potentially be out of the field. Much more dramatic than the 4 or 5 that we get with the current format. So day 2, bump day, the dramatic final day of qualifications for the Indianapolis 500. And it's a very simple and straightforward format, 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. Each non-qualified car will receive one guaranteed qualification attempt in reverse order of the Friday qualifying draw. This is another change I would make to make things a bit more fair, because a lot of times you see drivers on Friday draw a bad number and they're disappointed because they know they're going to have the worst conditions for their first qualification attempt on Saturday. This is an attempt to try to even that out, reverse that a little bit by reversing the qualifying draw on that second day. So the drivers who got a bad draw the first day and maybe got screwed a little bit by that, well, they might still be able to be on row 4 if their car is strong enough to be capable of that. I think that's very fair. Once the initial qualifying line is completed, qualifications will open up once again, and much like my rules prior, you get one qualifying attempt, or you get to lock one speed into the field, and if you choose to go out again, that speed is deleted. And of course, if you are 34th fastest and someone is qualified for the 500 and pulls their time and speed, you're back promoted into the Indianapolis 500 should that person crash. And at the end of the day, at 6 p.m., the Indianapolis 500 will hopefully be filled by the fastest 33 cars and drivers. And I think this is the most fair format to truly have a good and exciting and fulfilling bump day. You're going to get all the runs throughout the day. It's going to be very dramatic, and there'll be the question mark for 20-plus drivers of whether or not they're going to get in the field. And with as close as the competition is right now, you could see dramatic jumps between drivers, especially in that last hour. Could be in the last row, and if they get the shadows right, they get the conditions right, they could jump way up into row 4. I think that would be way more exciting. And then you've got the potentiality, if you're sitting 24th, you might not be safe. I think that's just way more exciting. So that's what I would do. I think it needs to go back to a true 2-day format, and we need to be able to have the pole sitter and the drivers bumped from the field, separated a little bit more. I think that will help with the quote-unquote ink. It'll help with the headlines. It'll help with social media. And I think television would benefit from it too, because you give them 2 extremely dramatic hours of television in the evening, which, of course, with TV being king, that's what you want. So this is my fantasy of what I would like to see the Indianapolis 500 qualification format look like. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. It's something that's been on my mind for a while, and I wanted to get it out there for you guys to consume. So let me know, and maybe someday they'll adopt this. I don't know. Probably not. No. In fact, they'll probably just get rid of bump day. We'll see you in the next video.